first leap year that I remember was brought to our attention in school in 1956. That's the first one I remember, 1956. I started school in 1953, but leap year didn't come along until 56 that particular time around. And I thought it was kind of cool and odd and nice in such a way that, everything isn't perfect with this 365. It's really 365 and a quarter, and so someone decided long ago, well, let's just all bunch them all up, and every 4 years we'll have one more day. I thought that was really nice, and then later on in life I started meeting people that were actually born on February 29th. So, 40 years can pass and they're 10 years old. That's they've had 10 real birthdays, and so I'm sure that those who were born on February 29th really enjoy having that special day fall on the day, and it all works out. They don't have to pick one day or the other. Well, the 28th is close enough, or the March 1st is close enough. I'll let that be my birthday. That's got to be a little bit of a letdown to a certain degree. You're just kind of making do until the real one comes along. But that's often what many of us do in our lives, isn't it? We just sort of make do until the real thing comes along. And then at some point in our lives we realize we don't have to do that anymore. We can actually just have what the real thing when it comes along. Now I titled my talk today, Leaper's Fork. There is a place in Tennessee, a little small little village called Leaper's Fork, and it's spelled a little differently. It's spelled Leiper apostrophe S. Somebody named Leaper in that name, probably a German name, something like that. Now, when you hear it, though, you think of someone leaping. And so I thought, well, where would that go? How could I use that phrase to make something of it? And the first thing that occurred to me is what this fork is talking about. And it's talking about a river or a creek or a stream, or as Virginians call it, a run, goes down and it forks, it goes two different directions. And when that happens, then that's a place of confluence where this main thing comes down and splits off in these two directions. And usually this was a place where animals would gather, because as they split like this, salt would form right there in that junction. Any salts that were in the water, and would get caught right there. And of course animals need salt, and they would come to that place. And so it became a place to hunt, it became an important place, and eventually a little village was built there by some European named Mr. Leaper, or something like that, the Leaper family, and that became a place that people knew about. Okay, so that's all great. That's how Leaper's Fork came to be. But the image that it created for me in my mind immediately struck a chord with me, and that is an old Yogi Berra quote that you all know very well, which is, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. He had several quotes like that that are amazingly profound in kind of an odd, funny way. Another one of his favorite quotes that he used, or my favorites that he used, was, you can observe a lot just by looking. Just think about that. You can observe a lot just by looking. But when you come to a fork in the road, take it. What does that actually mean when he says that, besides it being funny? It's actually deeply profound if you think about it. It says to us that when we come to a place in our lives where a decision has to be made of some sort, whatever road we take is going to be okay. One may be fraught with all sorts of problems, and it may be something that we think that we have made a wrong decision, and wasn't that stupid of us, but that is the road on which we learn the most. The other one seems to be such a fortuitous one that we just can't ever stop saying, I'm so glad I took this route. The other one, eventually we may say, you know, it was hard. It was full of all sorts of frustrations, and it was full of some despair and some sadness, and I had to give up some things. But boy, I'm glad I took that road. Because now, look who I am. Look what it's created for me. Look what I've become because of this difficult path that I have chosen. What it actually says to us is that wherever we go in life, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And that the road we took is not and never can be the wrong road for us, because it's all a part of our soul growth. It's all a part of it. Now, many of you may say, oh yeah, but what about, name it. Name it in your own life, whatever it might be. You know, if you really look at it closely and examine whatever decisions you've made in life, that where you are right now is okay. It's really true. Wherever you are, there you are. There you are. And your consciousness is right there. And it's not imploding, it's expanding. Always expanding, no matter what happens. Charles Fillmore knew this, and he spoke of it many times in many of his lectures and in his books. He spoke of the idea that spirit is in charge. Regardless of what we think may be happening in our lives, regardless of how we think we are in charge of our lives, spirit is truly in charge. Now, that means not necessarily that we're just supposed to lay back and do nothing and just allow the stream of life to take us down one fork or the other, and whatever is, and that's okay. That's sort of an attitude that keeps us out of the equation of our own life. We would just be floating along aimlessly and accepting everything and just saying, well, you know, this is what Spirit wants for me, and doing no work whatsoever. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about making decisions. Let's back up a moment. Let's back up to the idea of Yogi Berra's quote. We all know and we focus on the fork in the road, take it part. And we sort of accept the part where it says, when you come to the fork in the road. You see, that's very important to think about. When you come to the fork in the road means that you are on a journey of purpose in your life. You have decided to step out, and that road's going to fork many, many times for every one of us. That seems to be the way life is on this relative plane, this plane of duality. This or that, always. There's always those choices to make. The secret for every one of us is to get to a point where we are making these choices with Spirit in mind. Where we're not doing it for our own ego's sake or for a sense of power or a sense of fear. Many times we make decisions based on fear. I'd love to do this, but I'm afraid to do that, so I'll do this instead. I would love to accept this, but I can't because I just don't feel worthy about it, so I'll just stay on this one I'm on. I'll stay on this fork over here. Rather than saying, an opportunity presents itself to me, and I will say yes to that opportunity. I will get past the fear. I will get past the inert part of me, that law of inertia that I just stay at rest. I'll just do the easiest thing. Now, I say all that, and yet I must admit that for many, many years, days, and choices and decisions in my life, I have taken the easiest the path of least resistance. And what it usually does is it leads us down a fork that just becomes sort of a little eddy. And we just sort of spin. We just spin there. We do nothing for a long time. Then we have to pick up ourselves once again and say, wait a minute, I was on a road. I was going somewhere. I had a purpose. I need to get back and focus on purpose once again. In our spiritual lives, we often do this. We get to a place where we say, now this feels very comfortable. I think I'll just stay here. I'll just stay right here. I won't learn anything new. I won't have any more experiences unless the experiences do nothing more than just validate what I already know and feel and believe. I won't force myself into any situations that require my growth or that require some discomfort or pain. I'll just stay right here on this path and I'll be fine. The Spirit, as Spirit does, says to us, you're kidding yourselves. You know, it's very much like the phrase that one character says to another in the old movie, The Breakfast Club. He says to one character says to another, you want to make God laugh? And it says, what do you mean? You want to make God laugh? He says, how do you make God laugh? Make a plan. Make a plan. What that's saying is that as long as we're functioning from our finite senses and our limited understanding of what's going on, we will stay on that fork in the road, which makes things easier for us. We can make a plan that carries us a certain distance, but it won't ever, or necessarily, necessary is a very important word. It won't be necessary for us to continue forcing the plan that our ego wants in life. Because Spirit has a destination for us planned. It has something for us planned. Now, many people don't like that. They don't like that idea whatsoever. They don't like thinking that regardless of what plan I make, regardless of what decision I make, Spirit is going to guide me to something else, whether I like it or not. I have no control. That's a funny thing about spirituality. There are dualities and dichotomies in spirit. You know, like in the physical world, we believe that opposites attract, magnetism, that sort of thing. In the spiritual world, like attracts like. Like attracts like. So if we stay in that eddy and move nowhere for a long time, Spirit comes in there and says, move. We're taking you on for your higher good. Because the higher good for each of us as individualized experiences of God is to experience and express and unite once again with the oneness and all of existence. To sit back and say, I'm me and I like me and that's it and that's all I have to do and I'll make the decisions for my life and I'll decide when I'm going to get up and I'll decide what my job's going to be and I'll decide what kind of car I'm going to drive and that's all I'm thinking about on that sort of thin veneer level of existence. We get to a point where we have to say to ourselves, where Spirit says to us, let's let go of that. Let's come up higher. Let's move on to something greater and grander. When we do this, then we can actually say, I was on a march, I was on the road, and I'm doing the purpose that I was created to be, and I then moved to the point where I took the right and necessary action. The right and necessary action for every one of us in our lives is to accept who we are, that we are spiritual beings first, and that as we accept that, The spiritual energy of the universe rushes in to support us. And then, as we are on that road of life, and we come to the decision time to make, we take it knowing, regardless of what we're doing, all good is rushing forward to make it all happen in an extremely good way for us. Isn't it a grand idea to know that you can't make any mistakes? You can't really make any mistakes. None of us can make mistakes. Anything that happens to us in our lives can be transformed and made into good, because that's the only will that God has for each and every one of us. That Spirit, the grander Spirit, has. That will is for all good, for good to occur. You know, I've mentioned this before, I know, but I think it's a really good way to look at an example to show this. When I was in ministerial school, a guy named Timothy McVeigh blew up the Mora Federal Building in my hometown, Oklahoma City, well, near my hometown. I was absolutely shocked and dismayed. I called friends to see if they were okay, and some of them said, yeah, we're okay, but you know, we lost friends, we lost relatives, they knew people who had lost children and so forth. We had to ask ourselves there, what just happened? Can this be part of a higher good? Can it possibly be? Death to innocent people. I'm sure that every day now in Afghanistan and different parts of the world, people are asking the very same question. Libya, you name it. Kansas. They're asking themselves right now, how can this be a part of something good? How can this fork in the road have led anyone down something good? It's hard to fathom. It's hard to understand. But what we have to realize, and we were realizing it in school that day about the Murrah building, and that is that God was not behind that, and yet God was in the midst of it, automatically moving forward, immediately healing, immediately drawing people closer and closer together, and the best part of humanity started coming forth. It wasn't an immediate reaction to hate and kill and get revenge. It was an immediate reaction to love and heal and care. People just rushed forward from everywhere. Same thing happened when the Twin Towers fell. The same thing happened. People rushed forward to help people they didn't even know or had never known, and didn't realize that this was going to be a part of their life. But they stepped forward. They came to a fork in the road, and they took it. That happens for each one of us. So we have to have some courage. We have to have courage knowing that whatever choice we take and make, God is in the midst of it right there. Always moving forward to change the experience into good, a greater good than we could ever imagine for ourselves. We look at the things that happen in our life, and in the moment, it may be uncomfortable. But looking back at it, we always say, boy, I'm glad that happened. I'm not so sure I would have formed it that way myself and made the plan to look like that. But because of it, I've grown so much. I've deepened my understanding of wisdom of life. What has happened to me, I needed that because I was beginning to become too complacent. I was beginning to become detached in my love for my fellow human being. And now I'm awake again. I'm aware. You know, that's the thing about the experience of enlightenment that I talked about during meditation. You know, I saying, thank you for enlightenment. Enlightenment is that road that we're all on. It's not a destination. Oh, good, I'm enlightened. That's good, it's over. But that's what happens when we fall into one of these little eddies of life. And I know I'm mixing the metaphors of being on a road and being on a river, whatever, but it's really true. We just have these little places that we just, little layovers, and we stop and we wait. Sometimes for a long time, sometimes for a short time. The important thing for every one of us is to know that it's within us, innately within us, we have the power as we step out on faith. Now, faith is another story completely. Don't have time to get into it today. Faith is a word that we often use that can be misconstrued. There's blind faith and there's knowing faith. That's all I'll say about it, and that's something that we have to look at. But when you come, the road you're on, this life you're on, to a fork, a place to make a decision, take it. Make the decision. Make it in complete confidence that the Spirit is right there with you. That the decision you make, as long as you're not coming from a place of lack, fear, place of ego, power, anything else like that, know that the decisions you make in life are going to lead to your highest good. And the decisions that you make in life that are not for your best and highest good will be transformed into your best and highest good. So how can we lose? How can we possibly make a mistake? We cannot. One of the great things about life is knowing that God is always in charge. I had a friend, we quoted from this, I am with you always, even until the end of the age. The old King James version of the Bible says, lo, I am with you. Always, even until the end of the age. And for that reason, he wouldn't fly in an airplane, because he felt like, I'm with you when I'm low, but up there. That's the excuse he used. That was the road he took, based on his fear of flying. Make your choices based not on fear, but make them based on the contentment and the confidence that wherever you go in life, Spirit is there, leading you, guiding you, protecting you, enfolding you, always and ever.